Okay. All right. Hi, everyone. Good day. My name is Shalom Mathew, and I've been coding for like 5 years now. I'm a software developer, a JavaScript software developer, and I started coding at 2020, 2018. Now, as at 2018, I had the opportunity to go through like an internship. Now, this internship was in another state. So, I'm Nigerian. So, now I had to travel to the States to attend the internship. It was a 6 months internship. Now, one thing with this particular internship was that, in as much as it was 6 months, I had to attend classes every single day. Now, they were teaching software development, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, React, down to Node.js. Now, this particular experience, I'm starting with this experience because it sort of like shaped everything about my software development life. Now, during that phase, we're learning. It wasn't just me, there were different other students, and we're going through the classes, learning, trying to understand these concepts. You know how programming can be, especially when you're new. So it was quite different for me because it was complex, it was new to me. I mean, for someone that was just starting, everything seems strange. And that is why when I, teach and I see newbies trying to get involved, trying to learn this thing, it's not, it could be complex, it could be like difficult because you're new to it. Now, during that phase, I went through the internship, I was done. But after the internship, I had to relearn a lot of things that were taught during that internship. It wasn't because I did not pay attention, but it was because everything was new to me. And it was sort of like in a fast paced learning. And guess what? A lot of concepts were not really broken down. They used a lot of technical jargons. Um, there wasn't really clear explanation, and because of that particular experience, I had to like come out from the internship and relearn everything that was taught. So I saw myself like going through free code camp, trying to get resources online, going to Udemy, and trying to learn the exact same thing that I spent 6 months, that I had to even travel to another state to learn. I had to relearn everything. And I got my first opportunity as a software developer to teach because I kept telling everybody, "Oh, I'm learning this. I'm learning. I'm going to become a software developer during the internship." And when I was done with the internship, I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm done. I have the certificate. I'm a software developer." In as much as I did not really get like everything during that period. So because I kept talking about my experience and the fact that I am now a software developer, so a friend of mine called me and he was like, "Oh, are you willing to teach?" And I was like, "Yes, I can teach." And the truth of the matter is that everything was still new to me. In as much as I went through that whole phase, it was still new. It was sort of like a new ground. And I was just excited. So I was like, "Yes, I can." And you're like, "Okay, I'm going to connect you with the person in charge and you can talk to him." And I was like, "Fine." And I got the opportunity to talk with the person, and it was a nice interview, basically. In as much as it was not so complex, they just asked me the background and everything, asked me for like to get a curriculum, and I did. And eventually, I got the opportunity to teach my very first class. This was 2019, right before right before COVID and everything. So that opportunity was a really good opportunity because that was the first time I was going to stand in front of audience, like students, willing to learn from me, right? So it was new and I was excited. And remember, from my internship, I had to relearn a lot of things that were taught because coming out from the internship, I did not really have like confidence that I know this thing. So I had to like, go back, watch the videos, read things online, and relearn. And I'm telling this story because a lot of us are in this position. Maybe you've taken a class, maybe you've watched the YouTube tutorial and you still feel you're not yet there, or maybe you still feel like you don't completely understand things. It is normal because I also went through this particular phase. Now, I had to challenge myself. I had to like say, I learned this thing. I know this thing. So for each day, I had to come and teach. It was a physical class, not even an online class. So I had to come. So I'll go to the classroom on time, and I would, read through the things that I was supposed to teach for that day. And I would ask myself, how can I explain this particular thing, this particular topic or concept in a way that the students would understand it clearly? Now, remember, I was coming from an internship. During that internship, the explanation was not so good. Like, I sort of like came out feeling like I wasn't really convinced that I knew this thing. So I had to learn everything again. And most times, especially when the teacher is explaining and you keep asking questions, it could be somehow, it can be weird. Keep asking questions and you feel like you're the only one raising your hand. You may want to stop, right? And I was like, I don't want to put my students in that scenario because I went through that, I know how it feels. So, how can I try as much as possible to explain this concept in a way that anyone can understand it? And that was how I thought to myself, I was like, how can I understand something? Let's say it's as simple as your phone. So, how can I understand how to use this phone? Now, for those of us that are using maybe like if you get an Android phone, you would have to understand like how the Android OS works, right? In order for you to like fully maximize using that phone. Now, this was the scenario I painted. So let's say I'm using an Android phone now, and I've been using like an Android phone for like a long time, and then I get an iOS phone, an Apple phone. I have to like get to like go around the operating system, see how things work because of course it's different operating system. So the way of things, the gestures, everything is sort of like different. Now the truth of the matter is that once I understand how to use an iOS phone, it doesn't matter if I'm using or if I see an iPhone 6 or iPhone 13 or even if the latest iPhone 15, once I get hold of the phone, because I already know the operating system, I can always find my way around that phone. It doesn't matter the version or the year it was released, as long as I understand how the operating system works, I can use that phone. And I was like, that's it. If you can teach them to understand, then they can, start implementing, they can start practicing. So I was like, okay, now my students have to understand. So it's not just about, oh, okay, telling them to build this, showing them this, because this was like where I was coming from, the internship, that was what it was all about. They were just saying, oh, you have to practice, you have to practice, you have to build things. But the understanding was not really there. So I was like, okay, fine. So I have to ensure that my students understand this thing so that they can be able to use it. And I taught that class. It was a 10 weeks boot camp, a full web development boot camp. I taught a specific aspect, and at the end of the day, I got really good feedbacks, and that was like my first teaching experience. And I was like, wow, it was successful because not just because I was like, I can do it, but firstly, I had the confidence because I also knew the pain points. Remember, I was once a student and I didn't really like, grab everything. I knew the pain points of being a student and I actually wanted to improve. I wanted to ensure that the people that I'm going to be teaching, they're not just going to, they're not just going to like build things. They will understand and they will also build things. And I mean, after that class, I got my first real programming job as a software developer. And then I also got different opportunities to teach, because once I understood that tactic that my students have to understand before they can be able to build, That was how I moved. And I went in 1 year in, 2 year in, 3 year in, and I was teaching. And I was like, okay, during my learning experience, I keep saying I'm a visual person. I prefer like a video. Give me a video so I can watch and I'll learn. And I asked myself, okay, I want to do a survey of developers who love reading to learn and who love watching videos to learn. So I did that survey, and 85% of developers leaned towards videos. And I was like, okay, why? So right in the form, right, it was just like a very simple form. Asked, do you prefer learning through reading or video, and why? And a lot of people say, oh, I want the instructor to be able to like explain. Most times when it's a video, they take their time to break down things and they explain. And I was like, see, same understanding. And then other developers, of course, right, they also loved reading. And then some developers, right, wrote in the comment that, oh, they don't like reading because a lot of programming books have lots of tech jargons. And me personally, I have this experience. A lot of programming books have tech jargons, and most times I don't end up finishing them. So I was like, how can I improve this? Right? Now, now as a newbie in tech, first of all, there's going to be this it's a mind thing. You always feel, oh, I'm not there yet. I've not fully learned this particular thing. You're definitely going to have that. And when that those kind of thoughts come, all you need to do is to assure yourself that you know this thing. Most times you just try to build a project. But like I said, or on my own experience, take a gig. It could be a teaching gig, or you could even write an article and sell to a company. You could do different things just to lighten your spirit, right? Just to like engage yourself. Because when you engage yourself, you do something, and mentally, when that thing is successful, it sort of like boosts your confidence in knowledge. So it's perfectly fine to feel like, oh, I just took this HTML course, I did not learn anything. It's perfectly fine to feel that way. But don't stop there, don't remain there. Just try as much as possible to like build something, do something around what you're learning. Because the more you do things around what you're learning, the more your confidence level is being built. And it sort of like gives you this awareness that yes, I did this, so I can do higher. When you hit that point, I did this and I can do higher. And I feel like that was the point I got to with my book. I mean, after getting the feedback, and like I said, people don't like programming books. Most times, the cover of the book alone is scary. And that was the reason why I went through this storytelling approach. Now, I love books, but as a developer, 90% or 99% of the time that I'm learning is not through books, it's through videos. And one of the reasons on my end was because, oh, I feel programming books are sort of like scary, or the jargons in it is just way too much. And I'll feel like I'm confusing myself. And that was like the issue. So I had to improve on that. And growing up, like I said, I love book, I love stories, because stories allow me to understand things. With stories, there is no way you will read a story and you say, oh, I didn't really understand that story, except it wasn't well told. So we have this concepts, right? I've been teaching, and a lot of the classes I've been having is on React. And a lot of people know me for React. So I was like, okay, my first book should be on React then. And I was like, okay, so how can I make this book better? How can I make it different from other programming books? And that was why I chose the storytelling approach. So ensure that the audience, the people that is going to get my book, is going to understand, and not just understand, but enjoy reading it, enjoy learning. Because with storytelling, it's engaging. You want to know what's the next part of the story, what's going to happen in the next chapter. And for each React concept that I covered, I did tell a story. Um, One of the stories that I mentioned was about a lady that wanted to build a weather application. And her scenario, the issue that she was having with her weather app was unique to the particular concept that I was teaching. So I had to ensure that I connect with my audience and I don't just tell like random stories, but I tell stories that would help them understand that particular concept that I'm trying to relate or that I'm trying to teach. So that was why. That was basically why I took the storytelling approach to ensure that people don't just like read through it. They learn, it's engaging, it's enlightening, and they have this form of connection because they relate with the stories. So these stories, they are definitely relatable stories, and I just wanted it to be really unique. And by the time I like post like a tweet for pre-orders, I got a lot of pre-orders because I was like, oh my god, the demand was just so crazy. I was like a lot of pre-orders, and once the book was out, I kept getting orders. And just like what GDI is doing, GDI is going to give out my books. Other organizations were also doing the same, and I was receiving feedbacks, and it was just really, really amazing. And I think that sums up my story. I came from a developer that finished a 6 month class. I left my state to another state to go through this class, and I came out like, what exactly did I learn? It wasn't so much because of the way it was taught. Now, most times I told myself, oh, if I learned JavaScript variables the way that I explain it right now, it would have been easier. I would have gotten it immediately. And that's how I try as much as possible to improve on that. And if you're gonna ask me on tips, I would say this. Like I said, as a newbie, you definitely feel some kind of way. You feel like, oh, I've not fully learned this thing. It's normal. It's completely normal. All you need to do is to do mini tasks, do mini projects around that thing. It could be writing. It could be teaching somebody. It could be even like doing a recording. I do that a lot. Like I just off my recording and I talk about it. You can talk about it for like 5 minutes, 10 minutes. You pause the recording, watch yourself, and you said, "Oh, I actually do know this thing." It's just your mind playing jokes at you. So try as much as possible to like refrain from like having those thoughts, and then also when you explain things, try to break it down. Try to make it as easy as ABC. When you can say, oh, you learned ABC when you were in like nursery school when you're small, and up to now you still know ABC. So try as much as possible to break it down in a way that the people that you're communicating with always remember. And I think that's basically it on my approach. That's my short story about how I was able to become a developer of 5 years experience who has a book now. Yes, I'm an author. And of course, I mean, we have next year. I'm looking at still doing amazing things. And of course, my students, and you have GDI. One thing is that having a community helps you a lot. So please, your community, you have access to GDI on Slack. GDI always have events, classes. I teach in GDI. I teach React, between basic React, advanced React, Merge Stack. I take those classes. And we also have different wonderful instructors in GDI. You are in the best space that you can be in. And I'll tell you why. During my 6 months internship, I wasn't, in as much as it was a learning phase, they had the roadmap and all. I mean, it was because of that internship that I'm doing React now and I'm doing JavaScript now. But the instructors did not really do a good job. But with GDI, it's a different case entirely. I'm an instructor in GDI. So for me to be talking to you right now, you can use me to compare other instructors. So the standard Okay. Um, so I'm just trying, Katie, to wrap up this section.